Hello once more. Once again, this is a speed painting recording of mine. This was still made in September, I think. This time it's a little bit different. I made this painting because I wanted to cheer up a friend of mine, and I wanted to make something cute. And the first thing that came to my mind were elephants. And here we go. As you can see, I started with the sketch, same as usual. At this point, I actually had the composition rather clearly in my head. What difference does it make? In this case, I start with the elephant and kept with it for a long time before actually starting with the background. This only works if you're really sure your composition works, if you don't have to sketch it out. And at this point I was like, yeah, that will work, never mind. I'll just keep at it and it will work. The whole process was about 2 hours, a little bit less. I started without reference, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but because it's so long ago. And as you can see, I started with the sketch, with the line art. Then I took the pen tool, filled in, made the major shapes of this little fella, and I would go on from there, because as soon as I have the main shape, it's easy in Photoshop to just add in the painting. Because you don't have to worry about the shape anymore. You can just go around painting without worrying too much about losing the main shape. As you can see, I started with a normal solid color. Then I chose some shadows to give it the shapes. I gradually reduce the opacity of the sketch, because at some point I'm gonna blend out the sketch completely, because I don't want to make it like comic art. I will make something like this in the future, I'm sure of it, but at this one I wanted to make it cute, not realistic, but I didn't want to have the line art in the painting. And yeah, right now, if you've seen me blend out the shapes, the lines of the sketch to check if it works without. And as you can see all main elements are there, even without the lines. Now I just have to add the eye, and after that I think I'll get rid of the lines completely and just start with this one. Now I add in some ambient light, like light coming from below, to give contrast to the shape. I know that doesn't make much sense, but like for at the stomach, you can see there's shadow, and at the bottom there's upright line to separate the stomach from the legs, and the same with the ear. They are not 100% accurate, but since this isn't meant to be realistic painting, not at all, you can emphasize those elements a little bit stronger. Yeah, right now you can see there's not much to talk about right now, because you can see me just adding in details, make things sharp. Right now I'm using just the custom round brush. Every now and then I use the finger. I don't know what to call it in English, the finger, every now and then, to give some shapes to it. But I mostly use just round brush and keep adding some details. I actually don't know what I should talk about right now, because as you can see, it's a time-consuming process at this point, because this is the main focus of the image. This is the main character, and in the composition I have in mind, this is the only interesting thing going on. So I took especially long with this one, because I thought it would be worth it, because The eyes will always go there to this little guy. And that brings me to something else. If you make a painting or a drawing or whatever else, you have to always think where to add your details. If, for example, of course, you can always add an equal amount of detail to everything if you have the time, if the composition allows it. But if you don't, just make a rough painting and add in details where you want your viewers to look, because that's the focus point, I'd like to call it, is the area where you spend most of your time. You're gonna look for the most part on this little fella. Everything else just surrounds it, gives this guy a sense of being part of a world. But the main focus of this world, of this image, is this guy. So he gets the most attention, both from the viewer and from me as artist. I mean, if I have time enough, of course, knock yourself out, add details everywhere to the same level. But right now you can see I spent almost a third of my time already, of the entire painting, just on this guy, and there's no background whatsoever here around. Right now you can see me adding some shapes. What's this? These are the legs of the mother. I've imagined myself an elephant standing between the legs of his or her mother, and using her a little bit as an umbrella, additionally to his little leaf he holds up. And as of now, this is just very dark shapes. I didn't use any reference here for color. I tried to go from my mind. I usually don't, because I'm not too good at this part. I usually need some help with colors. But at this point I thought I give it a try, because it's a rather simple composition and a very, very limited color scheme. If you have like a dozen different elements, all with their own unique color scheme, which have to not only work within the object itself, but also with the surrounding, it's a lot more difficult. But right here you have actually two elements in my eyes: the elephant, the main focus, and everything else, because everything else gets the same amount of detail and focus. So they're just two objects that have to work together. And since the focus is on the small elephant, I can adjust the colors around him, so that makes the process a lot easier for me. Just taking a small sip. I'm not used to talking so long, neither in English nor in German, but I hope my voice manages until the end. I hope you understand me at all, because I'm aware I have a German accent, but I think it's okay for you guys. If not, I give my best to keep it to a minimum. But yeah, I'm no native speaker, so no promises here. Right now I'm thinking about, okay, where would the light come from? If the light comes from the top, and the mother's head would be on top of those legs, so she would block out a lot of the light coming towards the child. So I added a lot of shadows to him, and I added a lot of dirt on her legs, because if it's raining, the ground is wet, you have dirt lying around, and so their feet are especially dirty and brown, and you wouldn't allow them to go into your home without cleaning first. So I just took a custom brush and gave it some shapes really quick, some colors. Right now you can see they don't add up to the rest of the painting, and you see me taking a short break, probably took a sip or something. And now I add in some shadows. Those shadows help connect the ground and elements on it, in this case the elephants. And I still always go back and forth right now between adding shadows to the little guy and adding details to the foreground. Right now I try to give the ground a little bit of a shape, because if you have I have no idea how heavy an elephant is, but it's quite some tons, and get on the ground, it changes a lot. Because if you see elephants move around in your backyard, you will see some severely deep steps, even if it's just from the small guy, which I painted right here. I made some small of his footsteps and added in some puddles. I added some water in it. I don't recall the right term right now. I added some water on the ground where there's holes, some small holes, to see where this little fella went to get to his, more or less safety from the rain. Because you always have to keep in mind, no matter what you do, you have to always think about how the elements interact. I know this is something else, but for me, for example, if you walk in a video game, for example, if you as character walk around, no matter where, you want to have a little bit of the noise of where you're going. Because if you go on stone, it sounds different than if you go on grass or on earth or whatever else. Even if you're not listening if you're not actively listening to it, it adds a sense of realism, of being part of this world, even if your footsteps don't show up. But the same applies here. If the feet just stand on top of this ground, if something feels off, even if shadow, lighting, and anything else works, at least for me, I always get the sense of there's something mistaken. It's like you have a 10-ton heavy, several ton heavy animal standing on not so solid ground, and it doesn't matter, there's no difference. Then something's wrong. You have to give your elements weight. For example, take a rock and let it fall on the ground. If it's a small one, it just bumps off the ground and lays there. If you pick up a 100 kilogram heavy stone and let it fall down from 5 meters, it will definitely leave behind a mark. It will either sink inside if it's ground, it will harm the grass and the plants down there, or if it's solid ground like asphalt or stone, there will be cracks inside, and you gotta show it, because of course the watcher can always imagine it, but if you show it to them, you give them a sense of how heavy and how big it is, because it's a painting after all. This is not real scale. Nobody will look at this at the actual accurate size, so you have to give them some elements to look up for comparison. For example, I now add in some grass. I think probably I made it a little bit too small at the very beginning, because right now the elephant would be, like 20 meter in height, so too big. But just some small elements like this, they give a sense of scale to all of this. And both things, scale and weight, weight, are very important. If that's the focus of you right now, it is for me. Especially if you want to show big animals, big creatures, you want to create a monster. I don't think T-Rex would be very, like in Jurassic Park, for example, the T-Rex wouldn't be as impressive if not every time he makes a step, the water in the glass, I think, on the bottle, just keeps on shaking, and you can feel him coming close, and every step makes an impact on the ground and on you, and you can feel the trembling. And that's something you can put into your painting. Everything needs to have an impact. At least for me, I think that's something very, very important, and that's something I'm having a hard time doing. But I think it's just a matter of practice and just give it a try. And right here, I think I'm rather happy with how it turned out in the end, because I think you can really feel this huge animal and its child standing in the mud, and you feel them a little bit going into the ground because they're just so heavy, and the ground is a little bit loose because it's wet. And these are just small details, and I've talked about them like for 5 minutes, but these are just some small details I really appreciate. And whenever I look around and I see a painting and I see a monster and I just don't feel like it's there, I think it's a missed opportunity. But on the other hand, there are some artworks where I was really impressed with how a few little details make a huge impact. Like if you make, like I said, if you make a monster walk through grass, like all the grass gets turned under its weight, or like trees get pushed aside by the huge size of the dinosaur or whatever. I think those elements give a sense of epicness and give a sense of impact. Well, back to the painting, I add a little bit of a bluish light to the little guy. I was thinking about moonlight because it's of course a night setting, and yes, the moon shines despite it all being rainy and being really cloudy in the background. Those are just artistic freedom. You're an artist, you can do whatever you want. It's your world. And right now I increase the highlights. They may not be physically accurate, but I would just want to give a focus to the elements I really care about, which is primarily this little elephant and his near surroundings. I've added in some raindrops. I usually make rain in several layers. Why is that? I usually, for one, right now you can think about there's being a spotlight coming down on him, so there's some raindrops are lit differently than the background, and also because I wanna, as you can see with the grass, I like the blur effect. I wanted this DOF, this depth of field. I wanted to play around with this, especially in this one, but because it gives a sense of scale. I mean, in this case it makes the animal look smaller, but since I want this to be cute, I don't care, and you still feel a sense of weight by its mother's weight on her legs. And right now you can see the foreground element, the grass and the drops, a little bit blurred. Right now everything is blurred, I think, and just a small layer of where it's sharp. There's my focus point. This is where the little guy is. And what you saw right now, I duplicated, in the end I usually duplicate all layers on top of it. Then I play around with the auto correction, auto contrast, auto saturation, auto color from Photoshop. Play around, see what it gives me. Maybe there's something I like, maybe not, who knows. And then I play around with the final adjustments, like in the end you've seen that I've added a little bit of darkness on the left top corner right now, because and I also flip back and forth, especially horizontally, and this time I flipped the canvas because I liked it a little bit more, and I played around with curves and colors a little bit to get the result I intended. And well, that's it actually for this painting. As you can see, I tried to make something different. Even for me, something a little bit different. I wanted to play with depth of field, which makes the main character look a little bit smaller and cute. And yeah, in the end, despite it being a very dark image, actually, it feels cold and rainy and dark and night and nothing you usually connect with unhappy scene. but with a little fella in the middle who kind of enjoys this moment or is happy about his little umbrella. This makes up everything. So I think after all, it's still a positive image despite the colors in contrast. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I've given you some thought, some inspiration, whatever. I'm looking forward, as always, to hear from what you say. I hope to get back to painting sometime soon. Right now, I'm just re-recording my old paintings and the recordings, but I get back to painting quite soon, I hope. Well, thank you for listening. You can download the image on DeviantArt on high resolution, take a look at it, get painting, get creative, share what you made, and see you next time. Bye.